So one of the oddly, I find it strange how big of a story this has been, but one of the biggest stories that have been going through the mainstream media over the course of the past month or so has been Harvard president Claudine Gay. She originally kind of burst onto the scene of mainstream political discourse when she was testifying before Congress about anti-Semitism on college campuses. That originally sparked a ton of controversy surrounding her because she was, let's just say, not as forthcoming as many people are in the mainstream about just instantly decrying anti-Semitism when it comes to actual criticism of Israel. There has been a lot of hullabaloo about anti-Semitism on college campuses, which all of us and all of our audience probably understand is oftentimes uh, mischaracterized anti-Zionism. For example, we've had many discussions about from the river to the sea and whether or not that is an actually anti-Semitic phrase. And when she was asked to, state whether or not that, anti-Semitic calls for Jewish genocide are against Harvard speech policy, she gave kind of a non-answer because she knew that what she was being asked was about things that aren't calls for Jewish genocide, like from the river to the sea, and refused to, frame the question in a way that accepted that premise. And the media didn't like that. The Republican and Democrat politicians didn't like that, and it caused a big scandal. And then a lot of reporting came out, including editorials from the New York Times and other large, generally liberal media outlets about plagiarism that she had been accused of, and that has been the driving force, which did eventually cause her to resign recently. Now, there is a lot to go into on this topic. There is the anti-Semitism, anti-Zionism aspect, which we've covered before, so we can talk about a little. There is the how important is plagiarism aspect to this whole story, and there is how did this entire media narrative take place, because there's actually a lot of intrigue behind that. I'm going to let you guys decide. TJ, which one of those three topics would you like to discuss first?
Well, I wanted to go with the anti-Semitism one,
All right.
but I'm going to approach it from a communication angle. So, like, I haven't actually stayed abreast of the story that much. I know it's been out there, but I haven't read too much about it. But like reading with the interaction that you talked about there, John, when the question that was asked was, are calls for genocide against Harvard policy? That was the question.
Mhm.
And she said, it depends on the context. Listen, that's a bad answer.
It's a
It
bad
is.
answer.
I'm sorry. That is a bad answer. And this is something that I see people do a lot in politics, especially academia. It happens as well, but I watch politics a lot more. Is that they are given a question that they know they're trying to be trapped. They're trying to be tricked into saying something they don't want to say. And so the answer they give is actually worse than just actually going in with it. And the example that I like to think of is, do you remember last year? It seemed like for 8 months, every slightly left of center politician that was asked on talking about anything out of nowhere would be asked, can men get pregnant? Can men get
Uh-huh.
pregnant? Can men get pregnant? And they would answer, well, yeah, they can. And then they say, oh, and so listen, look, don't fall into the trap. Like if they ask, can men get pregnant? It's like, no, men can't get pregnant. And they're like, whoa, but you guys like, well, yeah, trans men might be able to get pregnant. That's the way to handle it, because that's what they're trying to do. They're trying to make you think, to make because you're common normie watching shit like this, all they're gonna remember hearing you say is, yeah, men can get pregnant without any context. Like, but or saying they can't get pregnant without context, and then just going through that way. So, like with the Harvard president, the plagiarism thing, who cares? No, it has nothing to do with anything. No one cares about that at all. Like that's not like the only reason that you can even justify people like politicians talking about it is because you can kind of connect the dots and saying, okay, if there's like hate speech going on at a university, that's the government does want to get involved in that. The plagiarism, like no one gives a fuck. But I'm gonna pass it over to Alex, who actually has an inside man or inside woman with the issue here. Can you tell us what we're talking about?
I mean, I don't know how much interaction I know this personally. She works for the medical school. I don't think she really interacts maybe with like the undergrad side of Harvard all that much. But yeah, really, when I was reading about this whole story, it just seems like it's just another conservative hit job. I mean, she has opinions they don't like. It's, for example, it reminds me of like when Ron DeSantis and Republicans in general rail against critical race theory, and they're like, "Oh, how dare they indoctrinate our youth? They're poisoning the youth of America with this." It's like, okay, whether you like the theory, whether you don't like the theory, whether you agree or disagree. I mean, it seems ironic that the party that just a few years ago was whining about being censored on college campuses is now trying to censor, like voices on college campuses they don't agree with. So it just seems like the reality is this. I think as people become a bit more educated, like for example, we get brought up with this notion that my grandfather used to tell me Reagan was the greatest president ever and all this stuff. And then, my mom being from Lebanon, I learned about how Reagan, for example, sold weapons to the government of Iran and gave weapons to the government of Israel. And had Bashir Jamal, the Qatar party strongman, on their payroll, and I found, wow, so all of the major actors of this, except for the Palestinians, the Reagan had been funneling weapons to. That's kind of in a nutshell what made the war as bad as it was. Is all these actions the U.S. made weapons that are now actively killing each other. And then you learn about Iran Contra, and you start to learn about how he supported Ferdinand Marcos in the Philippines and Mobutu in Zaire, and you're like, wow, it's another one, Siad Barre in Somalia. So he orchestrated the Isak genocide. So it's like you learn these things, and you're like, wow, the Republican Party did some pretty terrible stuff. But the Republican Party's like, no, we can't let you. No. That is devil speak, right? Like you can't sit there and say that. So oftentimes, as like it's academics who are the ones who usually research this stuff, and they're the ones who usually teach this to their students, especially to young students. And that's when they start to develop left-wing beliefs. It's like, well, this is just basic education. How does somebody interpret this information is onto them. I mean, of course, I look at this and say, well, I have a heart. I don't like human rights atrocities being committed by anyone. And when I learned all these things, learned about not just stuff the Republican Party did, I also bashed the Democrats. But what you see, though, is oftentimes with the Republican Party, it's just become this notion that, oh, academia is just always out. And specifically with the Harvard president, they were lambasting her, saying, "Oh, she's not smart. She's just a diversity, equity, and inclusion hire."
Affirmative action, yeah, like
and
that,
they're like assaulting her on that level. I'm like, actually, no, she's a rather well accomplished academic. And as to the point about plagiarism, I mean, look, nobody here is suggesting that it's okay to steal somebody else's work and then pretend like it's like it's theirs. I mean, that's dishonest. But part of me thinks, is this legitimate, or is this just like they want to believe it's true, therefore they're going to believe it's true? It's like if someone said, hey, she's a time traveling space demon who go throughout the various eras of time orchestrating genocides. It's like you have somebody who might actually believe it, or name the ridiculous conspiracy theory, the slanderous claim. It's like these are the types of accusations that get thrown down the pipe at someone just because they have political opinions. They're a political opponent, therefore any dirt goes, and you have to basically act perfect beyond perfect just to avoid any dirt being thrown your way, if that makes sense. So it like the reliability of the people accusing her becomes significantly less when they start to politicize the reasons they're coming after her to begin with, which to my understanding were purely political.
And that's the hook of this whole story, Alex, because it is a textbook case of the problems on the left. And when I say the left in this context, I mean liberals and everyone. And how our issues can be used against us to defeat us. And I'm not saying this based on my own pure speculation. These are the words of the mastermind behind this entire media and political campaign against Claudine Gay, who's Christopher Rufo. He's a conservative think tank guy who literally, and like I'm not, this isn't speculation, he basically live tweeted this whole thing. Like as this entire process was going on, he was like, okay, next we are going to pressure the New York Times to release an editorial about this. Next, we're going to do X, Y, and Z. He talked about how he needed to apply both political, financial, what was the third one? Political, financial, and there was another pressure. But like I'm really pissed that
Economic?
No, but I already said financial. I'm really pissed I forgot you got the third pillar there because I had it before. But the point is, like, he used our systems against us. He knew that Claudine Gay, if put up on a congressional testimony, would not be able to answer the question that TJ was talking about appropriately. Because Claudine Gay's problem as a president of Harvard University, she's very susceptible to we'll call it the toxic left-wing bubble that does arise on college campuses. Like, don't get me wrong, like there are bad people on both sides. And there are totally very toxic people who are very influential with the alums and donors to Harvard, who, if they're causing a hullabaloo on campus, Claudine Gay has to kind of toe that line. And when she gets asked that question, if she were to give the answer that you said, TJ, no, it would cause a lot of conflict for people who are very important to her. And so they knew by asking her that question in a congressional testimony, they would get her trapped. And they knew that they had these bogus plagiarism claims that, like, they don't care about. Like Christopher Rufo, like all of the Republicans, all the conservatives who are talking about this, they don't care about plagiarism. They
No
could
chance.
care less. But they knew that the we'll call it like the liberal institutions, academia, certain media outlets, they knew that they would come down on her for that. And if they could just push that narrative, they could avoid the political narrative while still avoiding political pressure and have that pressure coming at it from multiple angles. And this is this is a textbook example. I think everyone in leftist strategy should look at what Christopher Rufo just did and get worried about it, because he played this entire thing like a fiddle, literally telling everyone what he was going to do while he did it, and it worked. And it's really scary because, right now it's Claudine Gay. No one really cares. But like, this can be a replicable source of controversy, and this has captured media attention and drawn it away from the actual aspects of this entire conflict that matter and put it on Harvard president, right? All of the criticism that should be going to Biden for bypassing Congress and giving weapons to Israel, to Congress for continually supporting Israel despite the will of the American people, like all of this has gotten pushed under the rug somewhat for this Harvard president story. And it has worked successfully. We all got played like a fiddle. TJ, I don't know how much you knew about like that whole the whole political strategy thing coming into this. I know you said you weren't closely following this story. What were your thoughts when you learned about that?
Well, the Christopher Rufo thing, I I did hear about that. And this is something Republicans do a lot. Like it's not conspiratorial, because they announce it, and they did the same thing with critical race theory. They came right out, before it became a big issue, saying this is the issue that we're going to push. We're going to ignite the passions of regular ass people in the Midwest, and scare them into thinking that they're turning your kids against white people. In fact, I have a personal example of this. When I was year before, I was working as a legislative intern at the Indiana General Assembly. And there were a lot of testimonies people had about, critical race theory bills that the assembly was trying to pass. And there was a lady that came there. I will never forget this. I was sitting there on the House floor, and a lady came up and she was talking about, how she was worried about, what the teachers were teaching her children and everything, and critical race theory and everything. And one of the congressmen asked her, "Is like, so what exactly are they teaching your kids that you object to?" And she said that they need to be anti-racist. And like, you could hear a pin drop in the building. And then she went, "I mean, I'm not racist, but the whole thing about teaching anti-racism is just about being against white people." It's like, lady, that's contradictory. That doesn't make any sense. But this is it's just, it works. It works. And the thing is, like, they announce they're going to do it, like you said, John, and you have to be able to navigate this right. I don't know the circumstances behind Miss Gay and everything, and like why she couldn't say straightforward that yes, that a call for genocide is against policy. I have no idea. I don't know the circumstances behind that, but it seems like something you should be able to easily navigate through. And this is something, Alex, you mentioned about conservatives and their knee-jerk hatred toward academia. It falls right into their wheelhouse and everything. It's funny to me that conservatives are always talking about how evil academia is and how wildly out of control it is, and at the same time, they're stuck in a catch-22 where they tell their kids, college is bad. College is not. Of course, all the rich conservatives, of course, they send their kids to college. The fucking rubes, they send to college and everything. But college is bad. Don't get involved with it. Like, okay, well, you're just kind of guaranteeing that it's going to be a liberal place if that's the case. Like, you don't send any conservatives there. It's just going to be more and more concentrated that way. But academia does have this problem, John, where Or I mean, leftism and liberalism does have this problem where a lot of our language is almost necessarily academic,
Mhm.
and you end up losing regular people who didn't go to university. Like you will. And so a lot of the sociological stuff we talk about, those terms are created in the halls of the ivory towers of academia, and they don't translate well outside of it. Desmond and I had a conversation several months ago, back when I first came onto the show, and we were talking about how we neither of us like the phrase "Black people cannot be racist," because, like, academically, that's true. Like the academic definition of racism is that, you need to be the group of people who are in power, and you're exercising that on a minority group and stopping them, like on a on a nationwide scale or a societal scale. Yes, that's true. But that's not what racism means to colloquially to average person. That's not what it means. So
Mhm.
you go out and you say black people can't be racist. They think, oh, so you're saying black people can't be prejudiced? Then you got to go down these steps of trying to explain what you mean, and you lose people. So yeah, like a lot of these times, what actually is talked about in academia doesn't translate into real life. That's my thought about it. How about
And
you, Alex?
well, but
Oh, sorry.
I'm going to throw to Alex because I have a question specifically for him, but I wanted to kind of piggyback of what you're saying there. And the problem is that not only is it overly academic, they care way too much about the
Way
academic
too much. Way
fights
too much.
there.
Yes.
Like it gets so militant on the left when it comes to these academic things because we're used to fighting each other. We're
Yeah.
genuinely we're so used to like having this fight with other people on the progressives are used to fighting the liberals and the tankies are used to fighting the progressives. And because no one else will engage in this. Like there's no one you can have a in-depth
Yeah.
discussion on the exact definitions and effects of racism on a societal level, except for people who are very in-depth academically involved in the subject and if they are, they're probably on the left or are really fucking racist.
Yeah, exactly.
It's one of the two.
Feast or
So
famine there. It's gonna be
you're not having this conversation in good faith with the really racist people. So you're only having it with people on the left, and it still gets just as heated and militant. And what
Yep.
happens is you get this mindset of like that's what the world is because that's what your bubble is, and then once you pop outside of your bubble it's like no, you're crazy, black people can be racist. That's so clearly obviously true. I remember like when I was on college campuses, like I'm a pretty darn progressive guy, fellas. I think that my gravitas on that is pretty well stated, but I got like yelled at by other people on the left on college campus for saying things that seem to make sense to me.
Yeah.
And like it is a problem, and that is the pressures for Claudine Gay. Now, Alex, you are currently on a college campus, correct?
I'm a graduate student, yes.
Yes. So you I've been off of a college campus for at least a little while now. The climate and culture, obviously, you're graduate, that's different than undergraduate, but you're still there. Looking at like Claudine's answer to that question, do you think, oh, that's really crazy that she couldn't just answer that the way that TJ says? Or do you kind of see why a college university, especially an Ivy League university president, would be, in a hard position to answer that question the way she did?
I mean, I look at it and I think it's just such an inconsequential question to begin with, to the point where I'm sort of ambivalent. It's like I mean, it's like what TJ said. Yeah, it was a trap question, 100%. No doubt about that. But it's like at the same time, it's kind of like did you stop beating your wife? And you can say, yes or no. Did you stop beating your wife? And like, no matter how you answer it, it's just gonna come out wrong, right? It's I hear these trap questions and I just don't take it seriously. Like, okay, yeah, she responded to the trap question with a response that was controversial. Ooh, but like that was the point because there's no other way to answer the question other than to, I guess, answer it controversially or you dodge it, completely. So, I mean, it's just something that's so inconsequential. This is what frustrates me when you were talking about like left wing infighting and stuff like that, getting way too caught up in, or like even what TJ was saying, getting way too caught up in it sounds like identity politics and like social issues specifically, and not focusing on the broader system. Like, hey, you do realize that the
Well,
people who
they
go
get
on,
caught in the nomenclature. Like it's not even the issue itself. It's like the actual word you
right?
use is what really
Mhm.
sets them off, and that's what I think is insane. Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah,
it kind of points out the whole hypocrisy of all of this because like the conservatives are like, oh, Harvard, that leftist Marxist bastion, and it's like, yeah,
Hilarious.
the private institution with an endowment larger than the GDP of a lot of countries. Yeah, they're the Marxists over there. No, they're not. They're also, like, I agree with you, conservatives. They are the elites. Like that there is a problem there. The problem just isn't what you guys think it is.
Yeah. Another thing with that is that, so we all went to college. How many Marxist professors did you guys have in your time in college?
As far as I know, zero.
Yeah.
Actually, probably one.
I
think my hippie
have...
film professor was probably a Marxist. I would go as far to say, but he never talked about it.
Yeah. You spend 4, 6, 8 years in college, you may have 1 or 2 Marxist professors that you will ever run across. And odds are, 1 max for most people. And so it's funny that conservatives try to make it seem like, it's this like, this gaggle of Trotskyists that are running all these universities, and it's bonkers. I can't believe they get away with this shit. I really, especially a place like Harvard. Like the Kennedys went to Harvard, like John Kerry, like all the top echelons of American society go to Harvard. Yeah, the working man, they are not. I don't know how they possibly get away with trying to paint it that way. It's so weird.
No, and we talked about the trap question, which is actually funny because we are having another episode coming out this week about another trap question, but on the other side of the aisle, where we're going to be talking about how Nikki Haley was served the really hard conservative trap question of what was the Civil War about. If you want to hear us talk about that, definitely like and subscribe. That'll be coming out later this week. But if you've made it this far, thank you very much, and look forward to our future episodes.